Hello everyone, this is Tom Fox. I would like to welcome you to the Sunday Book Review. The Sunday Book Review is the series where I discuss books which impact the compliance practitioner, the legal professional, and the business professional. I hope you will enjoy this episode. Today's pod comes to us from Suzanne Olette, writing in Crime Reads. First, a quick word from our sponsor. The Sunday Book Review for March 20, 2022, the Spies Edition. Before we begin, please allow me a little self-congratulations, as the Sunday Book Review was named as one of the world's top 80 book review podcasts recently. So we were very pleased to receive that designation, and we'll put the link to it in the show notes. This week we take a look at some books that detail areas adjacent to spies and their work, both fiction and nonfiction. We begin with The Gentleman in Moscow by Amor Towles. It's a book about a Russian nobleman who finds himself on the wrong side of history in the 1917 revolution. He's sentenced to a life of house-time arrest, but he's exiled to Moscow's luxurious Metropole Hotel and not a Siberian labor camp. He builds a life for himself, even as the walls close in around him. His story subtly depicts how the tentacles of communism invade and strangle the human spirit. The Count loses everything to the communists but his spirit. Next up, Damascus Station. This is a debut spy thriller from David McCloskey, and he worked at the Central Intelligence Agency, wrote a story that he sat in a drawer for some time, worked for a consulting firm, then finally published it as a novel. His understanding of the world of espionage clearly comes through in the book from the case officer's perspective: executive surveillance, briefings, debriefings, interrogations involving both American and Syrian intelligence agencies. It is quite a debut novel. Next up, The Spy and the Traitor by Ben McIntyre. In this novel, or rather this work of nonfiction, it is a Cold War era page-turner about a senior KGB officer who spied for the British intelligence. He hailed from a family of Soviet intelligence officers, but a series of events made him question his work for and loyalty to the KGB and indeed the Soviet Union. First came the 1956 invasion of Hungary, then the building of the Berlin Wall in the early 1960s, and finally the Prague Spring. With disillusionment in communism and a Soviet system deepened after the time he was stationed in the West, his role in the Cold War, keeping the Cold War from turning hot, really cannot be underestimated. And we conclude with a book that goes in a very different direction, The Great Terror. In The Great Terror, Robert Conquest looks at the terror of the Soviet Union in the 30s, when millions of enemies of the state were killed or imprisoned. It was originally published in 1968 and later updated. If you're interested in that era of the Soviet Union, particularly in light of the Russian invasion of the Ukraine, you really can't start at a better place. We have a couple of new podcasts out on the Compliance Podcast Network I'd like to tell you about. The first is Hidden Traffic, where host Gwen Hassan looks at modern slavery and human trafficking. Gwen is well known in the compliance community for her passion around this topic, and she brings that passion to this new podcast. Also, I have a podcast on presidential leadership lessons for the business executives. What can business executives learn from the now 46 presidents, and how can you incorporate those into your business and leadership strategies going forward? This is appropriate for the CEO, the CCO, the CFO, or anyone else who's in a leadership position. Finally, I'm extraordinarily pleased to announce a 5-part podcast series at Taxman on the intersection of tax and compliance, where with my tax colleague extraordinaire Tracy Howell, we look at 5 different issues that every compliance officer needs to be aware of regarding corporate tax. It's a fascinating series that's on a topic not often explored.
This podcast is a part of the C-Suite Radio Network. For more top business podcasts, visit c-suiteradio.com.